Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for sticking around. Thank you so much. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our live prep session on behalf of SwiftProfile and SwiftProfile Community. We're really excited to have you join us today. Thank you for taking the time to be here. It shows your commitment to improving and getting better prepared for your next opportunity. We have put together a very practical and insightful session for you, and we hope you leave here feeling more confident, ready to approach your next interview. And without further ado, let's get started. So my name is Jumai Abdullahi. I am a project technical coordinator here in SwiftProfile, and I am your host for today. So let's go. So with me today, we have two persons, two of our team that would be handling today's live session. We are going to course across the data and business analytics interview prep, and we're going to touch on IT audits, cybersecurity specifically today as well. And after this session, we are also going to, share some tips, common mistakes to avoid when you have interviews. So thank you so much, and let's get started. Tora, could you go to the next slide? Yeah, so this is the overview of the agenda of the sessions that we're going to be having today. We hope you have a great time. We hope you stick around to the end of the session. Thank you so much. So next slide. So yes, so Shaq Adeleye is here with us today to also share insights on common IT, common mistakes you could make during an interviews. Afso Badmos is here, who is going to talk, about the IT audits, specifically, cyber GRC related interview questions. And Toworo Suleiman is here to take the data and business analytics interview. So we're going to be starting with Toworo Suleiman. Toworo, are you ready for us?
Sarah's in mute. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our live session today. So, the live session we're going to currently have now will be more on the data analysis and BA questions. So, this will be like a session whereby I'll be asked different types of questions, and I'll be able to introduce myself in terms of an interview session. So normally for any interview is usually you discussing your work experience, your previous role, and then you just try to market yourself on how you're the right fit for any particular role they're trying to put you through. So for this particular session will be more on the data analysis one. So we'll start. So normally I think you've been on asking me the question.
Yes, I will be asking you a question, and we're going to have like a simulation section of what a live prep interview usually will look like. So yes, I'm going to start now. So thank you so much for joining Toro Suleiman. Thank you so much for joining SwiftProfile Company. I have gone through your CV. I'm the hiring manager for this position, and I've gone through your CV. And like I must say, it's quite interesting, and I would love to get to know more about you. So hi Toro, could you kindly tell me about yourself? Just tell me about yourself, your experiences, where you've been, your journey so far. Like briefly, I really want to get to know you. Yes, I've gone through your CV, but I would like to get to know you. So I would like to hear, a little bit about yourself. So thank you, and over to you, Toro.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity and giving me the chance to come here for this interview. So my name is Taurus Lyman, and I'm a professional with over 5 years of experience in data analysis with a strong appreciation for interpreting data in appropriate context and gaining important insights that promote business progress. So I currently work at Zatech Limited as a data analyst, whereby I interpret data, identify relevant trends, and provide meaningful insights specific to business needs. And prior to my current employment, I worked with Sprint Q, also as a data analyst, and then thereby I was involved in designing and maintaining data systems, databases, and pipelines in order to ensure consistent data ingestions. And also I was involved in filtering, cleaning, and validating data to remove inconsistencies, errors, and missing values. And thereby I was also like involved in creating dashboards for the company, reports and visualizations, whereby we use this to present findings to technical and non-technical audiences. And I'm an industrious individual, and I'm a very passionate individual, and that's what also made me to finish my degree. I have a bachelor's degree in IT, Information Technology and Business Information System, and I've undergone several trainings whereby I've undergone trainings in SQL, Python, and Microsoft Excel functions, whereby I'm also like very diligent in that aspect. So for them, I'm currently working towards my data analysis certifications. So I'm using that as to sell myself and also like to build myself, because I'm someone that involves like self-progression, self-development. And over the years, I've been like key resource on multiple projects where I've assisted in automating reports with SQL as Excel and for objective management. And I've successfully gathered, analyzed, and interpreted data from various sources, such as database, APIs, spreadsheets, and other structured or unstructured data sets. And I'm meticulous, possessing like strong problem solving skills, and have the ability to work independently and collaboratively with cross-functional teams. And also, I'm also eager to expand my knowledge in data analysis, keeping up with different types of trends. As I also mentioned, that I'm working towards my data analysis certifications. And then on the day-to-day activities, I like to I enjoy watching football, I enjoy playing football. And then I also like love reading, because I feel like each time you like I mentioned, I'm a self-development individual, and then like I also like try to read more to gain more knowledge and to also like self-grow who I am. So I think that's all about myself.
Thank you so much, Dora. That was quite a robust, get to know me intro. It was really great. So thank you so much for taking your time to like share details about your experience, your journeys, your like. That was really great. So I would love to proceed to the next question. So why do you want to leave your current role?
Most especially because I'm currently working on a contract role, and the major reason why I want to leave is for growth opportunities. That contract roles are more like just sticking to like particular like companies whereby you're just there for a short term. So now I'm looking for a growth opportunities whereby I can work in a more permanent role, whereby I'm also there for a long time, and also like seeing myself going up like the ladder within the company. And I also like want to work in like a challenging environment whereby I'm put into like different sectors and also areas that also build my skill set. So that's more essentially what I was reading my current book.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dora. Thank you. So I am going to moving to the next question. So tell me about your most successful slash most challenging data projects that you've ever worked on in your career.
So my most successful and challenging data analysis projects that I worked on, I've actually worked on several multiple projects, and that was also like back during my time in Nigeria. And then in this particular situation, I was a data analyst for actually a retail company, and then we faced like a challenge whereby we're optimizing inventory management and reducing like stockouts. So in this case, I was tasked with what analyzing sales data, historical trends, and external factors to develop a predictive model that will forecast products demand accurately. And then in that case, for me to like address that challenge, I first collected and cleansed a large data set consisting of historical sales data, attributes, and external factors such as promotions, holiday, and weather conditions. And I apply like statistical techniques and time series analysis to identify underlying patterns and correlation. So after that, I like utilize advanced machine learning algorithms and regression models to develop a predictive analytics model. I incorporated like relevant variables from like data sets and fine-tuned the model using techniques like cross validation and regularize to like enhance its accuracy and generability. And then as a result, the implemented model that proved to be highly successful, I significantly improved the accuracy of like demand forecasting, allowing the company to like optimize inventory levels, reduce stockouts, and like minimize excess inventory. And this resulted in what improved efficiency for the company. So like I would say that's like my most challenging experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing this with me. Okay, so I'm going to just dive straight into the next question. And can you tell me about a time when you brought a new idea into the project team, and what was the reaction and the outcome of this idea?
I would say this was actually in like my previous projects while I'm in my current position, and this in this case our team was like working on optimizing a marketing campaign for like a consumer goods company, and we we're tasked with analyzing customer data, identifying target segments, and recommending personalized marketing strategies. And then during our like team meeting, I noticed that we're primarily like relying on traditional segmentation techniques based on like demographic and behavioral data. And then recognizing the potential to enhance our approach, I researched and discovered a new data-driven technique called like predictive clustering. And like this technique is actually like involves utilizing machine learning algorithms to identify like customer segments based on predictive patterns and preferences, and then going beyond like traditional segmentation methods. And I was more like excited about the potential benefits. So I brought this idea to the team during our next meeting, and I presented like the concept of predictive clustering and explained how like it's a help us to like uncover like hidden patterns and like tailor marketing strategies more effectively. And I also like share like examples of like successful implementations in other industries like support my case. So like in that way, like I was able to like convince my colleagues and like my team. So like the initial reaction from my team was actually mixed. Like some of them were like it because it normally happens like some people like say that, oh, I agree with this, I don't agree with this. So like some of my members were actually like intrigued about the whole idea and saw the value in exploring the approach. And while others were like a bit skeptical about deviating from like a method they were already like used to. And however, the team encouraged me to delve in deeper into the technique and conduct a pilot study to evaluate its feasibility. So I actually took up that challenge and I gathered like a sample data set and I applied like predictive clustering algorithms to identify new customer segments. So therefore, I also like analyze the results, compare them to our existing segmentation approach. And like these findings were actually like compelling, revealing like um, revealing like previous clusters with distinct preferences and behavior patterns. And that's like actually identify some areas that we're not also focusing on. And with this evidence I actually brought out using that approach, I presented it to the team and I emphasized the potential of predictive clustering that will be able to like improve the campaign targeting. And as a result, we decided to like incorporate the approach, and the outcome was actually remarkable. And like by leveraging that predictive clustering, we identify like highly responsively customer segments that we actually overlooked. So like this experience actually taught me the value of bringing like innovative ideas to the table and the significance of persistent and evidence-based reasoning. So that I would say that was actually the time like when I brought an idea that my colleagues were also happy about. So
Yeah, thank you so much, Dora, for sharing, going detail to like share it with me. That was really great, and I would be moving to the next question. So, what statistical method have you used in your data analysis? What kind of tools have you adopted so far?
Based on statistical methods, I would say just the data analysis I've actually like utilized various methods, and like this has also like helped me like derive insights and support decision makings. So I think first one in particular for me will be the descriptive statistics, and like in this case, I'm involving myself in summarizing and describing the main characteristics of a data set, such as the mean, median, mode, standard deviation range, and percentiles. And like this actually helps in understanding the central tendency, dispersion, and distribution of data. And another method I would say is actually inferential statistics. And this is used to like draw conclusions and make predictions about a population based on the sample. And like this also helps like the hypothesis testing and regression analysis. And I think another method I will also mention that I actually make use of is correlation analysis. And this determines the strength and direction of the relationship between two or more variables. And another method would also be the regression method. Actually, this is actually one nice method I usually use in like getting my projects and all. So like regression analysis is used like model relationship between a dependent variable and one or more independent variables. So like I will say those are actually like statistic methods that are like using data analysis.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dora. I would now proceed to ask you the final question that we have for you today. So, what do you understand by time series analysis? What is time series analysis?
To me, time series analysis is like a statistically technique used to like analyze and model data, and that is like used to collect like sequential over time, and it focuses on identifying patterns, trend, and relationships within the data, and the primary objective of understanding and predicting future values based on like historical observations. And then I would say that time series analysis has application in various domains, including finance, economics, sales forecasting, weather forecasting, demand forecasting, and signal processing. It provides valuable insights into the temporal dynamics of data and assists in making informed decisions based on future projections and patterns observed in like historical data. So that's what I'll say what time series analysis is.
Thank you so much, Dora. It was really nice to have you. I'm happy to have learn more about your, experiences so far. This would really help me in making a great decision into sharing feedback regarding this recruitment process. And my team would reach out to you, give or take, in 2 weeks about our decision. Thank you so much for taking your time to be a part of this interview.
Thanks so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. Bye. So thank you so much, Dora. This was really great, and I hope everybody is able to learn one or two things from this interview session. I would say one thing that I would commend him for was it was really, really outspoken. It was loud enough to hear. I was able to hear everything that he has to say. It was quite detailed in his description. So for the time about yourself, it's not just about it's about going through, like when they say tell me about yourself, they don't really want to like know better, like what you do or what you're wearing. They really want you to be able to like have a narrative, share a detailed story about your work experiences. Then along the line, you could introduce your personal life, softly into it. But the major thing hiring manager or a recruiter is willing to hear from you your experience. What are your experiences so far? What have you learned so far? So I hope we all are able to learn one or two things from my session with Towura. Without further ado, I will dive into our next session, which is on cybersecurity, risk assessment related questions. So thank you. Hi, Hafsor.
Hi, Jamai.
It's nice to have you here. Thank you so much for finding time to be a part of this session. I'm happy to have you. I have gone through your CVs, analyzed them, and I would really love to learn more from you. And this would help us, in decision making for this recruitment process. So, can you kindly just tell me about yourself?
Thank you so much, Jamai, for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. My name is Hafsa Badmos. I am an information security and GRC officer with hands-on experience in risk management, compliance, and security governance. I have a background in computer science, and I have built my career around helping organizations identify risk, implement controls, and align with global standards like ISO 27001, which is the security standard for managing information security, business continuity management system, ITSM, PCI DSS, which is standard for payment cards, also need cybersecurity framework. In my current role, I focus on strengthening the organization security posture by conducting risk assessments, supporting compliance initiatives, and improving internal control processes. For example, I contributed to identifying control gaps and recommending remediation actions that improve our compliance alignment and reduce operational risk exposure. Over the years, I've worked in different industries. I've worked in consulting, I've worked in edutech. I've also worked in fintech. Currently, I'm working in the FS section in fintech. And beyond my core role, which is information security and GRC officer, I currently volunteer for SwiftProfile, where I've helped, trained quite a number of professionals in cybersecurity and GRC, right? Overall, I am passionate about building structured business aligned security programs that not only protect assets but also enable growth and trust for the company. And outside my professional responsibilities, I enjoy vacationing and exploring different locations and food.
Thank you so much. At least I learned that you love to try new food. It was really nice to hear from you. Thank you so much for sharing a robust insights into your career, your life. It's really great to hear that from you. So I would be proceeding to the next question. And so, what do you do in your current role? I know you had mentioned that you're an information security officer. I really want to learn more about this role. What's like your day to day life? What do you do?
Yeah, as an information security and GRC officer, my responsibility my responsibilities focus on governance, risk management, and compliance. Specifically, I conduct risk assessment to identify, analyze, prioritize security risk across systems and business processes. I also perform control reviews and gap assessment against standards, different standards, standards like ISMS, PCI DSS, BCMS, which is the Business Continuity Management System standard, ITSM as well, SOC 2, right? I support the development, review, and enforcement of information security policies and procedures. I also monitor compliance, right, and track remediation efforts and ensure that issues or gaps are resolved within defined timelines. Now, when it comes to my responsibilities in overall, I use many tools to ensure that my tasks are effective, right? I work with tools like Vanta, Job Cloud, Tenable, Sophos. I use Vanta to automate continuous monitoring, right? Currently, I am monitoring 50 plus security controls, right? Which has helped me achieve 100% audit ready status, right? For just concluded ISO 7001 and SOC 2. I also use Monday to develop a centralized GRC roadmap, right? So that I was able to improve cross-departmental task completion, right? And I use tools like Confluence to manage full life cycle for security policies and SOPs. And I also use Jump Cloud as well to reduce the time to revoke for terminated employees across the organization. And I use Sophos as well to oversee 100% company endpoint, right? So just to ensure that infection rate is as low as possible. And I also use Jump Cloud as well to log our monthly privilege access reviews, right? And Tenable, yes, I use Tenable to for vulnerability management program, basically, so that I'll be able to like categorize different vulnerabilities by their levels, right? So using all of these tools has ensured that I impact my organization positively, right? I've been able to improve control effectiveness. I've been able to enhance compliance posture, and I've also been able to increase our stakeholder awareness of security responsibilities, which is like very, very important.
Yeah, thank you so much, Axel. Thank you so much for sharing details. I'm happy to learn that you're quite detailed, like you have deep experience in using different tools. But the JRC related tools, the project management related tools, monitoring tools. You are quite. I'm happy to learn your level of expertise in this area. Thank you so much. So I would be diving to the next question. And can you kind of like explain what you understand between what is the difference between risk, threat, and vulnerability?
Yeah, those three are the foundational concepts in cybersecurity, from my perspective. Threat is any potential event or actor that can cause harm, right? Vulnerability is a weakness that can be exploited by a threat, while risk is the likelihood and impact of a threat exploiting a vulnerability. In practical terms, right? For example, if we're talking about threat, we can say a malicious insider or an external attacker, right? When we say something is a threat, it does not mean that a harm has occurred already. It just means that it is a potential event. It's something that can cause harm. And when we say we have a vulnerability, an example of a vulnerability is maybe an outdated software, right? We can say misconfigured access control. There are weaknesses, loopholes that would allow a threat to mature, right? An example of a risk would be maybe unauthorized access due to weak authentication controls. So that is when a threat, right, has exploited the vulnerability. So if we have a threat and we have a vulnerability, if that threat has not exploited the vulnerability, we cannot have a risk, right? So an exploited vulnerability is what we call risk, right? And in practice and over my years of experience, I approach risks by identifying vulnerabilities through assessment and audits. Then after I map relevant threat to those vulnerabilities, right? These are the loopholes that we have in our environment. These are the weaknesses. What threats could exploit these vulnerabilities that would then cause harm to us, that would become a risk? Then, lastly, I sort of evaluate the risk based on likelihood and business impact, and it sort of allows me to to prioritize remediation efforts, and I'm able to focus on high impact risks to medium risk to low risk. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Hafsa. Thank you for being detailed in your responses. So I'm going to be moving to last question because I could see in your current role you've done great stuff. You are quite experienced, and I'm really curious to know like why are you leaving your current role?
Yeah. In my current role over the years, I have gained valuable experience, right? Particularly in building strong foundation in risk assessment, in compliance, and also in control implementation, and even leveraging several tools to achieve my goals and tasks. However, I'm now looking into transitioning into a role where I can work more deeply within a structured information security and GRC function. I want to be able to contribute to enterprise level security frameworks and risk management programs, and also to expand my impacts in areas like policy governance, in areas like audit management and security strategy. This move is simply is a strategic step for me. I want to be able to align my day-to-day responsibilities with my long-term goal, right? And my long-term goal is to become a well-rounded cyber GRC professional, right? A cyber GRC professional that is contributing at a higher level pace. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your response. So, how do you align security policy with business objective?
When it comes to aligning security policies with business objectives, it is very critical to ensure that security enables, right, rather than hindering the organization. And for my approach, the first thing to do is to understand the business goals. I identify key business priorities such as customer trust, regulatory compliance, the growth, and operational efficiency, because that is very, very important. Also, afterwards, I map security controls to business risks, where I ensure that critical assets are protected and any controls that I'm implementing addresses real business impact. When I'm talking about business impact, I look at different ways that the business could be impacted. A business could be impacted financially, legally, or reputation can be damaged. So I ensure that my control addresses all of these, business impact, business business issues rather. Also, I leverage frameworks, different frameworks like ISMS, 27001, BCMS, ITSM, PCI DSS as well, depending on what the organization needs. I leverage these frameworks and I ensure that I tailor them to the specific context of the organization. Lastly, I collaborate with stakeholder, both technical and non-technical teams, to ensure that our policies are practical, they are clearly understood, and also they are easy to implement. I believe that when it comes to implementing controls or putting policies together, if they are not clearly understood or easy to implement, you just put together jargons, right? Also, I define metrics, because if you do not define metrics, I feel like you've not done what you're supposed to do. Metrics would ensure that you're meeting targets, you're doing what you're supposed to do. So I define my metrics with compliance rates, numbers of unresolved risks, numbers of resolved risks, also incident response timelines as well. It just helps to track effectiveness and continuously improve the security program. Also, when reviewing controls, I ensure that they don't introduce unnecessary friction. Instead, they are designed to protect critical processes while still allowing teams to operate efficiently. So basically, that is how I would ensure that I have aligned security policies to business objectives.
Thank you so much, Absol. Thank you. I have taken note of everything you said during this conversation, and I would like to ask you, have any question for me?
Yes, I do have a question for you. I'd like to ask if SwiftProfile has been able to meet your expectations since you joined the company.
Okay, so yes, I would say it has. It's a really great place to work. I've been here for the past 4 years, and I must say, it's really good. In terms of the cultural traits is really amazing. They have a diverse cultural patterns, and they kind of like are really welcoming. Yes, our security environment is quite not mature yet. However, we have amazing team members, and we've been putting in a lot of work to like ensure that everything goes as well. I would say it's a really nice place, and I hope you get to see for yourself.
Okay. One last thing I would like to follow up, because from what you've said, I've been able to gather that security posture is yet to be matured or get to the peak. What kind of team do you have at SwiftProfile? Do we have segregated teams? We have different teams that works on different cybersecurity parts. Maybe we have a SOC team separately, the audit team separately, the GRC team separately, or we just have one department that governs cybersecurity as a whole.
So we have one department that governs the whole of cybersecurity as a whole, and however, within the one department, we have like sub teams across. However, the team is quite small. Like my team now, I lead a team of 4, so it's quite small. However, we're growing over the time. We intend to be more structured than what we have. So yeah.
Thank you. That would be all from my end.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hafso. I would be in touch with the recruiter and we should get back to you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much for taking your time to be here today and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah, thank you everyone for sticking around. We are done with the 2 interviews that we have for today, and I would be proceeding to the next session where Shaq would be sharing insights on common interview mistakes. And please stick around. Shaq is quite knowledgeable about he's been working for over a decade. So I believe you really don't want to miss this session. Thank you so much for sticking around, and over to you, Shaq.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are good. And thank you, Jumai, for bringing me in on this fantastic session. I'm actually impressed with the two interviewees, those who spoke earlier on different subjects. My name is Shaq. I'm a professional with over a decade, like Jemai said, in technology risk, IT audit, cyber GRC. I mean, I like to call myself a periton in that space. I think I know the length and breadth of it, but then again, there's usually just that 1% knowledge that you always have to continue to seek. When it comes to interviewing, right, I've done awful lot of interviews. In fact, I usually say this to my students because I've trained, quite a lot of people as well, that one of my biggest flex is interviewing. Right, it's a special skill set. It is something that every professional, whether gainfully employed or those who are seeking, new roles, should improve or should get. It's a skill set that you should have naturally. If anything, I would always, put myself into roles that make me relevant. I would interview for them, and I would get them. To a point where I've done this for fun. I've done this just to test my worth in the market, and every professional should do the same, so that they can continue to stay relevant. Now, for those that are seeking new employment, for those that are just getting into new roles, or for those that have upcoming interviews, there are certain common mistakes that I see most professionals make, because I also do interview for the company where I work, and I've done so across different companies where I've worked. And just to actually put a bit of background or context to that, I've worked with KPMG, I've worked with EY in the UK, I've worked with Google in Ireland, and I've also consulted for quite a lot of organizations. And in all of these companies where I have helped them to recruit people into different roles within particularly the tech risk space, I've seen interviewers make certain mistakes that are very common. And I've also supported quite a lot of people as well, in their interviewing journey. Now, these are some of the mistakes that I think a lot of people make, right? And one thing, that you should also note is going into an interview, see it as a conversation. See it like you're going in there to go have a conversation with someone who wants you to tell them about yourself, who wants you to prove to them that you're the right candidate, you're the right person for this role, right? So the more you see it as a conversation, the better for you, right? Now, going with the mistakes that I've seen people make, the first one for me is preparedness on the subject matter. If for anything, right, the two folks that spoke earlier on, one, Toro spoke on data management and data analysis, I believe, and business intelligence, and I also spoke on IT audit, cyber GRC. One thing, that struck me there was that both of them had prepared quite well on the subject matter. In fact, it would interest our audience to know that Toro is in fact not even a data analyst, right? He's way much more than a data analyst, and I do see this puts me in any subject for me to interview for a certain role. I would do well. I would do so well. Why? Because I would prepare so much on the subject matter. Now, yes, you've been working in a certain space. Let's say, for instance, you're an IT support specialist, right? And you've been working in that space for quite some time. If you have another interview, with another company on IT support and service management, you would be doing yourself a lot of disservice if you do not improve on that subject matter. If you do not try to try and see what are the new trends, what are the new things that I should learn about this area. One thing that a lot of professionals don't know is that when you get a job and you're working at a certain company, you are oftentimes, conditioned to the activities and tasks within that company. Now, there are lots more going on the market, right? Let's say, for instance, you've been hired into a role in cybersecurity, or you've been hired into a role, as a project manager. Oftentimes, you would be more accustomed to the project that you guys are working on within the company where you work. However, there's quite a lot of things going on, in the market that you should actually get yourself, you should be familiarized with, right? So you should get yourself accustomed to as well. That is you improving on that subject matter, because in an interview, yes, there's usually a JD, but when they're asking you questions, they would ask you questions that are related to the subject, but may not necessarily be related to the role that they're hiring you for. Now, to put this into context, right, I might be hiring you for a technology risk analyst or specialist role, but I'll be asking you questions that has to do with, let's say, working with team members. I'll be asking you questions around, delivering compliance programs. I'll be asking you questions around controls implementation. I'll be asking you questions around auditor independence, even though it does not, on the surface ties to risk assessment and risk management. But at the broader perspective, it covers, or it is still within the same, tent as well. So when you are going into an interview, prepare on the subject matter. You need to be prepared on the subject matter. A lot of people also, with AI now, you just, take the job description, you throw it into ChatGPT and tell it to give you, relevant questions. Now, relevant questions based on the JD, you've given it a prompt, condition it to a certain list of questions you should ask. And what you should be doing is you should be asking it to give you questions related to that job description, but also any other thing within that subject matter or within the subject, within that role. Let's say, for instance, asking role-related knowledge, not specifically to the job description, but to everything around that role, right? So that is when you'll be doing yourself, or you'll be putting yourself in a position whereby you learn a lot more on that role, right? So prepare so much. You cannot be too prepared. And, this preparation also leads to you learning not just about the role you're interviewing for, but knowing about the person that would be interviewing you, doing a bit of research on that person. Most people have LinkedIn profile. Go in there, try and check them, try and see, what have they been doing before they got into that position where they are the one interviewing you. What are you currently doing in that position? What does their footprint looks like? What do you think is their core strength? And try to speak to their core strength. If someone is going to be interviewing me, I would want to know about you. I've prepared myself in such a way whereby, I'd have looked into your profile. I would check everything you have online and try to see what your strong areas looks like. Then I would prepare alongside your strong areas. When people are interviewing you and they see that you have, knowledge in areas where they consider to be are most important to them, they would be very much interested in speaking on that, and you can use that to win yourself quite a lot of points, right? So again, that is preparedness on the subject matter, and it can never be too much. It can never be overemphasized, right? So going into your next interview, make sure you prepare so well on the subject matter. Now, to the second point, I see a lot of people, do this, anxiety, right? And this can be controlled. It can't be eliminated. That is why I tell people, yes, it's okay to be anxious, but it would be more okay if you're way less anxious, right? Again, you're going into an interview, not to a war. The highest thing they could tell you is no. Then if they tell you, oh no, but don't move in your head, it's okay. I'll shrug it off. Every interview, take it as a learning opportunity. You would learn something. You'll be asked something that you've never been asked before. Take that question, prepare for it, put a response to it, so that when you get into your next interview, if they ask you that same question or anything similar to that, you would use the new response you've prepared for to answer that question. So anxiety actually kills your chances of getting the job before you even open your mouth. And the only thing you could do for yourself is to be less anxious. Now, I see a lot of people go into interviews or try to even speak anywhere publicly, the same way we're doing now. And you could tell from their voice that their voice is shaky. They're not confident enough. They're not, they're not, are composed. They do not put themselves into good shape for them to be able to even respond back to a question in a more structured way. Now, the way you could actually kill anxiety, it ties to preparedness. If you prepare so well, you'll be less anxious. That's one. But the most important way is for you to be intentionally, confident, to intentionally kill all form of anxiety. I mean, I'm speaking to someone like myself. I'm interviewing. The person interviewing me is human. Yes, they probably, they may be in that position because they've gotten a job in that company. That does not necessarily mean they have more experience in that area more than me. If I'm anxious, I will not be able to pass across my knowledge to them. Now, when you're anxious, one thing it does to you is that it messes up with your articulation, right? And if you're not articulate, that is it. What are you going to be saying? You would know what you want to say. You have it in you, but you'll not be able to pass it across in such a way that the person who is listening on the other side would be able to put it together very well to say, oh, this person actually knows what they're saying. You just be everywhere, not coordinated, not composed as it should be. And that is what anxiety does. It kills your chances, right? So when you're going into an interview, just tell yourself, at the end of the day, you can't beat me. Last, you say, oh, you're not giving me the role. It's okay. I would improve on any feedback you give to me so that I would eventually get something better. I have seen people, being rejected for roles that was going to pay them less, to a point where they eventually bag a role where they are earning way more, right? And you could do that as well. So at every point in time, prepare, be less anxious, be very much articulate. If you're less anxious, it would help with articulation. And articulation is everything. It allows you to speak, quite freely and quite well as well, right? And the top thing there is not seeking clarity. Now, this happens a lot. And I will tell you guys here, I've supported quite a lot of interviews. And if you care to know, I would probably put, a rounded figure, over 1,000 interviews I have supported, right? And I've also coordinated quite a lot of interviews, probably, in its hundreds. And in fact, myself, I've taken probably by now over 200 interviews, a lot of interviews. And I've gotten a whole lot of job. Maybe in other sessions that we're going to, that probably we should be able to show you guys a few of us that I've gotten over the years. In fact, there are some interviews that I attend. I don't need the job. I just want to attend to see or to test my own worth, in the market, and to see that, oh, I could still get the job. And I'll get the job. And I'll tell them, oh, no, I can't do this. I'm not going to take the offer. Now, one thing that I do in those interviews, one thing I've seen, one of the mistakes that I've seen people make is not seeking clarity. Now, there are certain questions where, when the interviewer asks you, you need to understand that we are all from diverse backgrounds. We're all from different backgrounds, right? So we can't always understand the same context or the same terminologies the same way, right? And I've seen people say, oh, I'll give you guys an example, or let me not give any role-related example. I've given a certain related example in technology risk space. But one thing is, if they ask you a question that you think, okay, maybe the way they asked, if you let's say, for instance, you ask me something, and I might term it in a certain way, different from the way the interviewer wants me, to respond. It's okay to ask them. It's okay to clarify, to be certain that, is this what you're referring to, right? Is this what you mean? I'll give an example. In my own profession, right, there's something we call finding, right? Let's say, for instance, you performed an assessment and you noticed certain finding, right? Now, some people will term it as finding. Some people will call it deficiency. Some people will call it issues. Some people would even call it all of it, right? There are different names to it. Observations, right? Some will call it observations. Now, these terminologies have not been agreed professionally by anybody to say this is what we should call it. Now, finding could mean an issue. Finding could mean an observation. Finding could mean a deficiency. But in other terms, finding could also mean documentation, to document what you discussed in a certain assessment or what you found, not necessarily an issue in this instance. Now, if someone say, okay, talk to me about certain findings you've had before in your previous role, you want to quite clarify what they are referring to as finding. Are you referring to finding from a documentation perspective or finding from an observation or issues perspective? But if you don't mind, I can speak about both. That is how you win yourself points. That is how you seek clarity in such a way that the person who is interviewing you knows that, oh, this guy knows his stuff, or this lady knows her stuff, right? So you want to actually, ask for clarity. In fact, you can even ask them to allow you to put your thoughts together. Right. I mean, you could actually ask me certain questions, and maybe we're doing some competency-based questions, and you ask a question around, oh, tell me about a time I've been struck with a question before. Tell me about a time you worked on a project that failed. And this was me, interviewing for a role with Google, and they asked me this question, and I was like, okay, a project that failed. So, I mean, in another scenario, somebody would have said, I never failed in my life over my dead body, but I didn't say that. I only asked to say, what, can you give me, a few minutes to gather my thoughts, right? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, why not? Right, they allowed me. I put my pen down and I wrote something down. I put the structure into how I want to communicate the failure in such a way that it would represent failure by the end of the day, not a failure in a certain way, right? And that was what I did. I asked for time. And before even I went into responding to the question, I also, tried to seek I had to ask for clarity to say, hey, can you clarify what you, I mean, when you say failure, do you mean, something, let's say a project I didn't deliver, or could I talk about a project where, I delivered, but it did not meet the expectation? And the guy was like, well, I'm happy for you to even talk about any of them, just a time when you feel like, okay, I failed on this certain task, right? And that is me asking for clarity. That is me seeking clarity. And that allows the person to, respond back to you. And it leans into my fourth, reason why, I mean, there are quite a lot of reasons. I just, picked this four that I've seen in a lot of people over time. Now, the fourth one here is lack of engagement. You see, let me tell you something. When you ask for clarity, in a certain way, if you don't overdo it, I mean, I see a lot of people say, they ask you a question and say, oh, can you come again? That is not you asking for clarity. That is not you seeking clarity. Sometimes, it could be due to anxiousness. Then, pardon, can you come again? No. You could even put that in a better way. I mean, I understand the question you asked, but do you mind, helping me provide a bit of clarity just to be sure that I understand what you're asking? Now, that is you engaging. A lot of people lack engagement in an interview, and it ties to you going into an interview, just sitting there waiting to be asked questions. No, that is not how it works. You need to go into an interview, see it as a conversation, see it as you're a person as well. The person interviewing you, oftentimes, they don't even know more than that subject. They might not even have as much experience as you do. I have interviewed with people, with companies, and I am dead certain that this person doesn't even have as much experience that I do, right? Again, and it does happen. I've literally told someone to say, hey, you do not have this knowledge. I've had one interview where I was telling, one of the directors of Accenture, right, that they should go and try what we call XLOOKUP. They were talking about VLOOKUP. Do you know VLOOKUP? I'm like, well, I do VLOOKUP. I know VLOOKUP. But do you know, I asked them back, do you know XLOOKUP? I was like, oh, I've never heard about that. Try it, and you never go to VLOOKUP again. You would really love XLOOKUP. And they went into that XLOOKUP with me. We started talking and conversing and engaging, right? It became a conversation. They saw that, oh, this is someone who actually even knows a bit more beyond what we expect, right? So that is how you should do it. You don't necessarily have to show that, oh, you know anything more than they do, but you should engage them. You should speak back to them. You should smile, laugh. It's not a war front. It's not a war zone. You're not trying to, don't be timid, talk freely. And again, I see this in a lot of Black folks, migrants, most of us here, right? So we sometimes, put a bit of barrier into we communicating or expressing what we know, or maybe thinking it could be inferiority complex. I don't know. It could be, out of it like. This is what's the syndrome called again? That's gifted, right? Now, but again, the point is try as much as possible, right, to express yourself in an interview. Engage. The person is also human. They have, a lot going on in their lives beyond that role, beyond that interview. You could talk to them. It doesn't have to go too personal, but you could talk to them. Yeah, how's it going for you? If, let's say, for instance, they're interviewing you on a Friday, oh, it's the weekend, do you have anything planned? And they would talk to you as well. They would, it's super busy right now. How you could engage them in certain ways. And when you're also asked to, ask them questions, feel free to ask questions that would also engage them or that would allow them to talk back, and discuss with you and even tell you, oh, this is a very good question. Yes, it happens a lot and all those things, right? So you need to engage, but you need to even say things outside of work. You can say, oh, after the work, if you have a pet, you could talk about your pets. If you talk about your dogs or anything, right? Or if you watch football, you could talk about it. If you love cooking, if you love running, if you love even doing anything, dancing professionally, or even doing athleticism at a professional stage, talk about it. They want to hear about it. They have lives outside of work. Now, if you do not engage them and you just respond back to all the questions, like okay. They've asked you a question, you've responded, and that's it. At the end of your response, you don't even close your response well. You just respond and you just stay there looking. No, when you're handing a response, right, you should put it also in a way whereby the person would, be able to pick it up from there and ask you for the questions. They say, okay, yeah. So I mean, given what I've responded, I think that's my understanding around, what you've asked, what do you think about that as well. And again, they would engage. They are also human, right? So I mean, those are the common mistakes that I've seen. Some of them, there are much more, obviously, but if anything, I would put this for as the topmost that is actually making people lose. I mean, I could add one more. Let's say, for instance, not asking the right question. I've seen people ask questions that I personally consider as weak or even sometimes stupid questions. Or why are you hiring to this role? I mean, do you know the job or not? Why did you even apply yourself if you don't know why they're hiring into the role? You shouldn't be asking those type of questions. You should ask questions, that leaves them thinking about you. You should ask them questions that, help them to understand that, oh, this is actually a very reasonable person. This is someone, that if we bring into our team, we'll be able to settle in well, would work collaboratively and cross-functionally with other teams, and would also be able to, express themselves and work without supervision. Those are the things that they want to see in the questions that you ask them. And I do hope that, at the end of the session, you guys are going to be able to, take all of this that I've said, work on them. If you think any of this relates to you, I wouldn't know. But if any of this relates to you as a person, I would say, you go back to the drawing board, or maybe, reach out to our team. I mean, these are areas and places where we help people overcome over a period. It is not, when it comes to interviewing, I also want you guys to say it is not a race. It's pretty much a marathon. You don't get better overnight. You get better by taking into. So people think, oh, you should just keep preparing. No, the more you take interviews, the more you overcome the anxiety, the more you start realizing that, oh, it's just people asking me questions as well, or engaging me, so I need to be able to engage them as well. The more you keep improving on, areas that, or your weak points technically, right? So you keep improving on your weak points, you then keep getting better, right? So you need to take interviews, take one at a time. And over time, you become way better at doing interviews. So I'm going to leave you there today. And again, thanks to the folks for bringing me in to speak to you guys. Right. Over to you, Jemai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shaq. Thank you so much for being detailed and sharing your experience as per usual. Because this is my first time having you, and every time with you, feels really good. I've seen people drop comments like, "Oh my God, it's nice to hear your voice one more time." But like I said myself, I could resonate with a lot of the points that you made. So recently, I was having a conversation with my team, and I was like, "Why do you even hire people? Like, what are the things that you look into?" And they're like, "Oh my God, you have to be friendly." I'm like, okay, something as
absolutely
being engaging. We had situations where we had people come in and they know they had the skills, people from EY, the big fours, and they were like, "Oh, they look too serious." I'm like, "What do you mean they look too serious?" But is that not the idea to get the job done? And they were like, "No, they want people that they feel like they'll be relatable, people that, free, people that they could reach out to or talk to when we're having team sessions, and hence why they didn't give them the job." So please take everything that we said here really seriously. I'm happy we're going to be back. This is going to be a continuous session, and we plan to have more sessions, as we proceed. Hopefully to have you guys join us and continue with us. Thank you so much for taking your time, and please welcome to any questions. I'm also monitoring the chat box. If you have any question for myself, for Shaq, for anybody, we're happy to respond before we round up today. So I'm going to give you a few minutes. If we see any questions, we'll respond. Otherwise, then we'll have to call it today. Thank you so much for joining. Okay. So I don't think we have any. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you, our interviewers. Thank you, interviewees, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And see you next time. Bye. Okay, somebody has a question.
Oh, Jim, there's a question.
Yes. I could see. Come across as having an. So yeah, I think not necessarily, but like I said, anxiety can be different form. Handshaking, gesture, necessary. It's definitely going to be like an anxiety. However, you could more when you're having interviews. You kind of practice. Some people kind of use balls. There are different techniques you could use to overcome this and anxiety. That has to do with your hand moving when you're talking. However, you just have to adopt different styles to make it look cool and not let them feel like you have anxiety. But like Shaq had mentioned earlier, and he's also here to, buttress this point, it get better, you just have to, overcome it gradually, get better. The more you take interview, the more, you get better at it. And like he mentioned, it's the worst of it would be no. So it's just see it as a learning process. And Shaq, I think we have a question that speaks on anxiety, like a physical anxiety here. So I don't know if you would like to like share more light to that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've just been told so as I joined back, right? So just to get a question, is it talking about if you moved your hand during interview? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. That he moves his hand when
right.
talking.
So,
does it come across as, having an anxiety?
I don't think so, absolutely. I move my hand a lot when I'm talking. In fact, when I'm passionate about something, maybe because I wasn't sharing my full video, as I was talking to you the whole time, I was moving my hand, right? Now, when you move your hand to maybe gesticulate or, to drive your point, home, it doesn't mean your hand anxious, no. Anxiety to me, right? Again, when you're not structured, when you're not composed, when you're not articulated, when you can't pass your point easily. I mean, you can see the way I'm talking now, right? So I'm just free flowing, talking well. I mean, sometimes you want to talk, but your chest is beating fast. You want to talk and your voice is trembling, right? So I don't know. And I like for people to be very honest with themselves. Audit your own self. Try to understand. When I'm talking or when I'm facing crowd and I'm speaking with people that I do not know, again, how do I feel going into that conversation? Does my heart pace up? Do I sometimes have like trembling voice? What can I do to overcome it? First thing, you have to intentionally kill it, right? I go in there knowing that you might not even have my experience and I do. You can't beat me. That's the thing, right? So I'm going to come here, talk about what I do. You can ask me something that I don't know. I'll tell you, well, I may not have experience in what you've just said. However, this is what I know. This is what I do. This is what I've done before. And if I am hired into this role, this is what I could do as well, right? And if it's a physical interview, I would use my hands, right? Again, if it's a physical interview and I'm sitting, by a certain desk, the other person's on the other end, right? They might probably not see my hand, but I could move it. It does not technically mean you're anxious, no, right? It means that you're the type that, maybe gesticulate a lot and you want to use your hands to drive your point home. It doesn't mean you're anxious. Anxiety is something that, as far as I am concerned, it gets reviewed, the way you talk, it gets reviewed, the way you even speak at the person. Sometimes, have you seen an instance where in an interview, it's not even a physical interview, right? And, the interviewee, meaning the person interviewing, cannot even look back into the camera, right? So see the way we're doing. They would rather be looking front and be looking side no, that is you being anxious. Look back at them. Now, how much more when you're in the physical interview? Look back right at the person. If there is an interview panel, I would look each of them one after the other. I would literally be moving my eyes as I'm talking, provided that I've prepared so much on the subject and I know what I'm saying. The moment you're anxious, you lose your chain of thought. Even if you've crammed anything, which I sometimes tell people, you don't have to even cram. But let's say, for instance, you've crammed something. You would let's say you've crammed something, and when you're preparing or when you're getting yourself ready to go into the interview, you can divulge that thing easily the way you've crammed it. But if you're anxious, you would realize that you would not be able to divulge it. Why? You'd have lost some part of it. You would not be able to pick the point the way you should pick the point. And that is what anxiety does to you. It just kills your chances of being able to deliver all the things you've prepared for the right way that you should have delivered it. Does that answer your question for the asker?
Yeah, thank you, Shaq. We have another question
Yeah.
that speaks around how do you handle a question when you do not know the right answer? Probably you're being asked a question and you don't know it. How do you, handle situations like that?
Well, thank you very much. Right, so I get asked about this a lot, and I think that is one of the. So I wouldn't say it's a common mistake, so that's why I did not include it. That is most people's fear when they go into an interview. What if they ask me what I do not know? And yes, they would ask you something you do not know, right? They would literally talk about certain things that you have absolutely no knowledge about. Now, one thing I'll first tell you is to never go blank in an interview. Do not say, oh, I don't know about this, right? Now, you could ask them to actually clarify, and you could tell the person to say, let's say, for instance, you ask me, do you have any experience, working with, let's say, iBond, diligent iBond? I'm like, could you please explain what diligent iBond is? Oh, diligent iBond is an internal GRC tool that we're using. Well, while I haven't used diligent iBond, however, I've used awful lot of, GRC solutions. I've used Vanta, I've used Leica, I've used Toropos, I've used, Archer, I've used you could talk about ServiceNow. I've used about quite a whole lot of GRC. And one thing that I'm very certain about is there's obviously an opportunity to transfer the skill set across all of these tools. Now, when they ask you something you do not know about, again, make it obvious. Don't make it too obvious that, oh, I don't know it, and just leave it there. No, talk about it and say, oh, I might not have certain experience in these areas you've talked about. However, this is what I have done, or this is what I know that relates to what you've asked me. You need to leverage your strength, your strong areas when they ask you or they take you to a tough where you do not have as much experience. Right, it could be project management, and they talk about, have you handled, let's say, cloud-related project, or have you done anything, cloud-based? You could talk about it to say, well, I mean, most of the projects I've handled has been on-premise. While I haven't done anything, cloud-related, but one thing I've done is self-development in cloud space. Particularly, I've taken, AWS Cloud Practitioner, and if I were to be placed on a project that relates to cloud services, whether it's infrastructure as a service or software as a service, I would deliver excellent it, given that I have expertise in project management, on-premise related, and I've also taken or I've developed myself in the areas of cloud. Now, you haven't done projects in that space, but there are other things you've done that might be used or that you could leverage to win yourself back the point. You could take it back away from that person. Let me tell you something. When you ask me about things I do not know, I would take you back to things that I know. I would literally hijack that interview and take you to places where I'm very much comfortable. And I've done this, for my very first interview with KPMG. And the guy asked me certain questions, they were talking about different questions, but the moment, he asked me about databases and he went into talking about Microsoft SQL Server. Now, at that point in time, I know Microsoft SQL Server to be a database, but I do not, because I've never used it before at the time. And, I was just fresh out of school, in fact, coming out, I was still even serving at the time. What did I do? I took the guy into Oracle database. At that point, I had already obtained my Oracle Certified Profession. I knew Oracle so well back then. So I was able to help. I was able to respond back, using that my knowledge on Oracle databases. And that is what I would do. If you ask for something I do not know, I would take it from that point and take you to where I am most comfortable, right? I would literally talk about, oh, I don't have as much experience in this area. However, I've done something that is also very related. In fact, I do have extensive experience in this one, and I know that I know that one. So, and they will be forced to ask you questions in areas where you know, right? Because again, they might maybe have experience in both. So they would then ask you questions around the one you know, knowing fully well that your knowledge of that one can be built on or transferred to what they're asking you about. So that's the way I'll deal with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so
much. Does that answer the question for the asker? Yeah.
Yeah, please, guys, share more questions for us to take. And please, if anyone is interested to be a part of this, we're happy to have you guys on board, to have your prep sessions with you live here, and we get reviews after the interviews. We would point out better ways to respond. So please feel free to reach out to me so we can have you on board.
Okay, is there any other question for me? Sorry, wait.
So we don't have any for now.
Okay. But yeah, so thank you so much, guys. If there's any question, feel free to drop it, reach out to the SwiftProfile team. I will be able to take them. Happy to respond back to the person via email or via any other channel through our team. It's been interesting, chatting with you guys here, and happy to come back here anytime I'm called on. Take care, folks, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Yeah, so Ireti, the next session will be communicated, very soon. Next week, our team would communicate the next session with you guys, but we intend to have this more frequently. Hoping to see you guys join us. So thank you everyone once again. I really appreciate you taking your time to be here. I hope you're able to learn one or two insightful things, from this session. And I hope to see you guys in our next session. I remain your host, Jumai Abdullahi. Bye guys.